Sometimes you're going to get a project where you see a bunch of videos in the Windows Explorer, Mac or PC, different file finder, etc. And you can see them here. And it seems like if you double click on it, it's going to play. Great. But the Explorer and the operating system, depending on which OS you're on, will be a lot different than the video editing program. The computer has a bunch of different ways of reading files called formats or algorithms. So here is an example of just how many there are. Look at all these different video formats. It's crazy. And then the codecs. That just means one company or the next spent a lot of money and wants to block another company, and you pay them every time that you edit video, or you buy a camera that can handle it, or an editing program can do it, like $1 or $2. So it's the war. It's the war between who does the best codec. Phones, televisions, expensive $20,000, $50,000 cameras, etc. The quality, what happens. So let's get past that. So you get an MOV file, but it won't go into your Vegas editing program. You can't even see the arrow. In this case, I can't, but let's say I couldn't, all right? Or you go into your program for DaVinci Resolve, and the same problem happens. You can't bring in the video. It won't let you. So if you're going from MOV to MP4 or MP4 to MOV, you could probably use an in-between program. The in-between program is a converter, like Video Solo, Video Converter Ultimate, or there's other converter programs that I have shared with you, where they are, the demos, the programs themselves, and where to get them online. You know, Wondershare has their own website, etc. So here's Convert on both of them, right? This program, Video Solo, just tends to work amazing. I don't think they're the same company, but they have more of those codecs that you saw, more of these things. More of these are inside of it. So if you go to File, Open, watch this. If you go to Add File, look at all the supported formats. There's so many that if I move this over, it would fall off the screen. And it's going on my other screen, another 30 or 40 file types. That's how many file types they've either paid for or decoded themselves, so that way you can go from one program to the next. That's why somebody's camera doesn't go into your editor. That's just how it works. And you could download some compression formats for Windows. You can go to, let's say, for instance, download video codecs Windows. You have to be careful because there could be viruses. But one of the best is the K-Lite codec pack. And that helps Windows play them, but not always the editing programs. Sometimes those don't help. So you can go in here and you can download some of these different things. This is pretty old, but K-Lite codec pack number 1532. That could work. And there's different versions of it. Small but powerful, standard, mega, with all the things you can imagine. And you can download the gigantic version, 58 megs, and you can download all those. Now you can at least read the files that somebody gives you. Problem with that is, now you can read the files. But just because you can read the files doesn't mean you can edit with it. Because I've downloaded YouTube videos, like you watch a video on YouTube, for instance. And in YouTube, you want to download a file. So there's a way to download the file with like the YouTube downloader. So you find a video that you want to use. And you want this funny thing about James.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm here.
As it plays back, you go to your downloader, etc. And you get a download panel, and you can download the video, the audio. WebM, MP4, this is not the same kind of MP4. There's many, many different types of MP4. And it will not load into your editor. So that's the problem. So what you do is you go into one of these programs. Let's say this one. And we open up a file that we already have. Let's say, for instance, either a downloaded file of video that my friend gave me, or the Bronx in the 80s, let's say. Boom. Opens it up and it can read it. You sure you can read it? Play it back. There it is. Now, if there's no audio, you can look for the audio part that you downloaded here and look for the same thing. The Bronx in the 80s, AAC is audio. And if I open this up a little bit, you'll notice it's a smaller part of the same file. So now I can play back the audio. Then you can compress it to something new. See this little thing? It's going from this to this. Look at the size, 1280 by 720. And I think it's probably 24 or 30 frames a second, 2997. So where do we want to put it? Settings. I want to put it into this conversion. I made my own folder. You could call it whatever you want. Now here's all the settings it can be. Look at that. That's insane. Look at all the things it could be. Confusing. So for general video, you can go to, or HD video, it depends on how you want to do it to edit. You can go to H.264, not 6.5, because that's not for editing, nor are most of these. So let's go to MP4, and in MP4, it'll keep at the same resolution, and there's a lot of things going on inside there, and then you just convert. With a slow computer, it would take a while. With a faster computer with a faster graphics card or a GPU, look how fast 10 minutes is converting. What it's really doing is just copying the same video inside of the container, the thing that holds it with the word on top, MOV, MP4. So it's really just moving it over and changing a couple of things so you're still getting the same quality for the most part. Sometimes if you go from one conversion to the next, it loses quality and gets a little grainy or blocky. And that's called recompression, and that's not good. But sometimes you have to do it if someone gives you a format that's not so great. So once this is done, we'll be able to use it inside of a program and actually edit with it. So if you notice the Bronx in the 1980s Part 1 dash right here, MP4, I moved it to the MV folder. You'll notice that inside of, for instance, if I go into Vegas, right, and I load the older version of that, let me go into downloads. Here is the old version of Chance the Rapper, or the 80s Bronx piece. So watch this. Now we're lucky enough that in this editor it loads, but it's kind of frozen there. It's kind of having a hard time reading it. It's kind of freaking out, as you can see. Let's try a different editor, see if it'll actually even read it. As you see, nothing's happening. It's not loading it. It's not able to do it. But how about the converted version that should be done now? Let's take a look if it's done. It's done. It's completed. So let's go into that folder and take a look. So I'm going to go into my hard drive where I have that stored. And I'm going to move it over where I can find, there you go, right there. Now, it'll definitely come in. Look at that. Did you see that? It comes right in now. Because now it's a standard MP4, not a weird one that some website thing or some video editor gave you or something. And you can put it right in your timeline on both programs. And it plays and it reads. So you have to remember a couple of things. First off, you have to have the original file that someone gave you or you downloaded, right? In this case, I downloaded it. Find out where it is. There it is, the Bronx Part 1. I got that off of YouTube. Then you have to use the converter program if it's not going to work, and put that into the converter program. If you forgot the audio, or if it's from YouTube or somebody gave you multiple files, maybe you have to add the audio, but you can't do it that way because now it's going to try to convert the audio by itself. Go into here, find the audio file that goes along with it. This is only if you use YouTube, okay? And then convert it. Remember what style you want to convert it to, where you want to put it, and press convert. When that's done, it's in a different hard drive in a different location. Now, we go into that location, that hard drive, and I have it here in this example, and I'll find it in that video from the 80s, right there. And as you can see, it could definitely move in now. It's still an MP4, but at the inside, the compression algorithm itself, let me show you. Video compression algorithms. Now, a great way to do it is look at it in images. All right, so I'm going to minimize that. So sometimes things will compress a certain way. Original and then compressed, that loses some of the quality. See the difference? See the pixels are a little bit different? Sometimes it'll look good. Sometimes it'll look for the difference in where the car was and everything else is the same. What's another good example? There you go. That shows you what it's looking at and how it's changing it, how a computer does it. But think about all these different layers called initial and then the changes, intermediary file, etc. So you could learn about that stuff. But the most important thing to realize is that There are so many things going on when they recompress a file from one to the next. It gets super, super, super scientific, and it's wonderful to learn, but there's so much to learn. Forget about it, okay? Just know that from one to the next, for average quality jobs, all you're going to do is use a conversion program that does it, where you put it, and then the new file. It would be nice, for instance, to go into that new folder where you just put it. For instance, I put it into, from downloads, I want to go down here. Just one thing to remember, it is a good idea to maybe take that file and maybe rename it. I pressed F2 to rename it. So you go into here and you call it recompressed, or whatever you want to call it. Maybe that's a little too long. Part 1 fixed, you call it, or whatever you want to call it. So that way you know the difference between the original files and the new ones. And delete the old one if you don't need it. Unless it's super high quality video that a videographer gave you and you want it for later. And that's it. That's all you need to know. Let's take a look at this to see if it's functioning. See, it's still stuck. So we'll have to close that. There we go. Open it up again real quick and see if this one comes in now without freaking out. I'm pretty sure it will. There we go. We'll minimize this.